In today's show, the Blazers are back on the basketball court, and we look ahead at what it's going to take to make the playoffs. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen. Free on all platforms, coming at you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. So start your weekdays, make the show your first listen, tell your friends to do the same. Locked On Blazers, your team every day. Today's show, we're going to talk about the Blazers' second half of the season. They play a game in earnest this evening, Thursday, February 23rd at Sacramento to begin the second half of their season, the final 24 games post-All-Star break. Little news heading into what we know prior to that game there. And then we will talk about the Blazers, both historically what they've done in the second half, as well as what it's going to take for the Blazers to truly make the playoffs. I want to talk about sort of the myth-making behind how special the Blazers have been after the All-Star break, because here's the truth. They have been good at times, but not always perfect. And then I want to talk about like the reality of where they are now and how they're going to get, if they're going to make the postseason, what that's going to look like. That's what we'll do in today's show. But first, let's hit the news. Blazers released an injury report ahead of their first game back after the break, where they are in Sacramento to face the Kings. Sacramento been pretty good this year. The Blazers wish they were that good, but Portland is still going to be shorthanded. The team announced that Jusuf Nurkic remains out. Justice Winslow remains out. Anfernee Simons, no surprise there, remains out. Abu Baji, if you really wanted to believe, remains out. And Jerami Grant has cleared the concussion protocol, and he is ready to return. That means the Blazers will be down with, Drew Eubanks will start at center, but they will have some spots to fill on the wings at the 2 and the 3. According to Sean Highkin of the Rose Garden Report newsletter, Chauncey Billups told Highkin, I guess, that Jusuf Nurkic is progressing well, and also reported that Justise Winslow was, when, the way it works for reporters is like you get let in at the end of practice. They're not still practicing, but there's like guys getting on court work afterwards. And Highkin said that Justise Winslow was doing more stuff, running, jumping, shooting, than he had been previously when they'd open the doors and you see a little bit, and he's just doing stationary shooting drills. That's bodes well for Justise Winslow. It doesn't bode well that he's been out for 2 months with an ankle sprain. So it must be just a gnarly ankle sprain. In general, I don't give much credence to the progressing well language. The Blazers have been so strange with injuries over the last 12 months that when Jusuf Nurkic is back, he'll be back. I think the notable thing is that he's not available. He's ruled out a full day ahead of time for the Thursday game. He's ruled out Wednesday afternoon for a Thursday game. So it was clear he was not going to play. Winslow, also according to Highkin, not going through contact portions of practice yet. So he's still, even if he's making some progress, he's not super duper close, or he would be back bumping around with his colleagues. That means that there are some starter spots up for grabs. Basically, 2 guard and the small forward spot. Wings, I think, is probably one day we really will get away from positions, but for now we'll call it the 2 and the 3, shooting guard and small forward. Obviously, the choices are Matisse Thybulle, Cam Reddish, Nassir Little, and Shaedon Sharpe. Chauncey Billups, according to Highkin, said that he's really deciding between Sharpe, Thybulle, and Reddish. I don't know if Billups and Nassir Little have beef. I would assume that they don't, from what I understand, from the little reporting I've done on this subject, little digging I've done on this subject. I don't think there's anything there. But Chauncey Billups just doesn't trust Nassir Little. Doesn't trust him for a big minute role. It is curious to me, but Nas has never earned it. Some of it was just like obvious defensive issues, but like And maybe they really want to see what Cam Reddish has, and they're really invested in seeing what Cam Reddish has because Nasir Little's under contract for multiple seasons and Cam isn't. So it makes more sense to go that way. But I'm surprised that Nas wouldn't even be considered as a chance to start because also you want to see what you have. If I had to guess, I bet Thibault and Reddish will start and Sharp will continue to come off the bench. If I just had to guess based on the way Chauncey has, this is purely a guess based on the way Chauncey has done rotations in the past. But my hope is that Shaedon Sharp plays 28 to 35 minutes. And if you come off the bench, 28 is probably more in the range that you could realistically play unless you play a really long stretch in the second half where you don't come off the floor. So, yeah, I hope Shaedon Sharp plays a bunch. That's one of my big hopes for the rest of the season. This Kings game, they play at Sacramento Thursday, and they have a couple days off on the weekend, and they play Sunday home against the Houston Rockets. So if you're itching to see them, you can catch them Sunday at the Moda Center. Contact your local ticket representative. I don't know if that's the thing you still do. Then they play a back-to-back Tuesday and Wednesday at Golden State and then against New Orleans. It's at Golden State and then home against New Orleans. Those road home back-to-back stink because that is not a very valuable road game. Like you flew the night before or home game rather. It's you flew the night before. You're getting back into Portland late. It's like that's a tough one is the road home back-to-backs. Obviously home road is really hard too, but like road games are hard anyways. You want to rack up home wins and getting one that's particularly tough. Second night of back-to-back against New Orleans, that one is tough. And then Friday they begin a 6-game road trip in Atlanta. I'm kind of beyond the point of predicting here's what the Blazers need to do and this is if they do X and X and we're too deep into the season. I've been burned too many times by giving them my optimism. So I'll just say they're going to have to win some games, and I'll put a specific number on it later in the podcast of if they want to make the playoffs. But the push starts now. I mean, Houston is an easy game, but Sacramento, Golden State, New Orleans, Atlanta fresh off firing their coach and trying to make a playoff push. You're playing. This is a stretch of playing playoff teams other than Houston. So get that win. Try to stack some others. That's your plan forward. We'll probably see a lot of Tease, a lot of Reddish, and a lot of Shaedon Sharp and 17 minutes and not a second more of Nasir Little because that's how the coach does it. Okay, let's talk about what the Blazers have done historically in the second half. I think there is a belief or this idea that the Blazers always are really good after the All-Star break. And this is when Damian Lillard ramps it up, and this is when the team takes off. And I dug into the history of this. And I'll say this as before we get into the specifics. There's some truth to it. Absolutely some truth to it. That stuff's real. The reason why people say that is because it's real. But before we do that, I want to tell you, dear listener, about FanDuel. Listen, we have reached the halfway point of the NBA season. The second half of the NBA season is upon us. It's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to three-pointers drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same-game parlays. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA. All right. I think I have believed this for a long time, and I've seen people. I've got a couple emails about it, and I've seen some posts about it on r/Rip City and a handful of tweets here and there. But there is an idea that the Blazers have a chance to kind of put their foot on the gas and cruise it, make a run for the postseason, and because they have historically been really good after the All-Star break. And I think I believe this. Before I had looked it up, I in my brain, I was like, yeah, I think that's true. Like this is like they turn it on. They've been a really good second half team. Like you hit the All-Star break, sometimes they're kind of underwhelming, then they get going and they kind of that stretch of 8 consecutive playoff runs was buoyed often by second half charges. So I wanted to go to the numbers to find out if that's true. And I only looked at the post LaMarcus Aldridge numbers because one, I didn't want to look at like a decade of Damian Lillard performances, but I think the sort of like Dame as the dude rosters are maybe a little better of a comparison. Although like even like on the like people who played regular minutes in the 2019 Western Conference Finals run. It's one guy on the roster. His name is Damian Ollie Lillard. Like young Anfernee Simons wasn't getting serious minutes at that point, and no one else was on the roster then. So like even comparing the last time they made a big postseason push, obviously is apples to oranges. But what we're really looking at here is like, is this sort of is the urban legend of the second half Blazers true? And like, let me tell you, for a time, it absolutely was. 2015-16, the year they finished 44 wins, kind of made the playoffs out of nowhere after LaMarcus left, and they pivoted. They went 17-11 after the break. 2016-17, that's the following season. They kind of doubled down on a roster that was mediocre because that was kind of their MO. They weren't very good. They had to trade Mason Plumlee. They get Jusuf Nurkic. They go into the All-Star break at 23-33. That's a bad team. Like they get rocked by the Jazz heading into the break in Nurk's first game, and they go into the break just like kind of just not good, just straight up not good. They come out 18-8 after the break, finish 41-41, and sneak into the playoffs. 2017-18, the following year, 17-7 after the break, and then 2018-19, the year that they ended up in the Western Conference Finals, 19-6 after the break. So the first 4 years of the Dame as the dude era, yes, absolutely crushed it after the break. This is who they were. It's like they get to the All-Star break, they'd be scuffling, or they'd be like 2018 and 2019, they ended up with high playoff seeds, right? It's like, we're going to be good. Let's go be good. And they made sure that they ended up like, with home court advantage in the playoffs. One of those years didn't work out great. You may recall in the 2018 playoffs when they got swept as a high seed. So that was troublesome, but it wasn't because they didn't, they put the playoffs are their own sobering reality separate from the reality of just like, you got to play well to get there. The season is incredibly long, but typically in those first 4 years, they were really good. Then at post All-Star break, Blazers were really good. In 2019-20, like you'll recall in March of 2020, our lives changed forever. For the worse, to be clear. They're worse now. I guess like many of us work from home, which is maybe more convenient, but like it's worse. Life's worse. So the immediately following the break, their first 10 games, they went 4-6. And then Rudy Gobert tests positive for the novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2, and the world just went to heck. And it stayed in heck for an extended period of time. The Blazers came out after an extended hiatus and Dame went nuts in the bubble, and they made the postseason, and that's great. But I don't think counting the 3 months off, or 2.5 months off, go to Orlando with no fans, play a separate set of games when Jusuf Nurkic is back healthy. I don't think comparing that to the post All-Star is particularly useful data. Like that's just a different thing. Following year, also pretty screwed up in terms of scheduling. The season started in December. They tried to cram it all in there to get back on a normal schedule, thanks to what had happened in the bubble and finishing the season in August and blah, blah, blah. They had to they played a 72-game season, and they played a bunch of games all in a row, super compressed season. So after the All-Star break in 2021, they were after that All-Star break they were 21-16, right? Like they played 35 games. They were basically the same before the All-Star break. Fine, they won more than they lost, but it wasn't like they took the big run. It was still a big chunk of games. It was basically half the season. It was more like the midway point as opposed to like the 70% mark, and then you push from there. So 2/3 of the season done, and then you push from there, which is like the typical All-Star break stretch. Again, not particularly meaningful, but it condensed like in terms of comparing apples to apples here. And then last year they went 2-21 after the All-Star break because they tried to lose intentionally. They shut everyone down with I'll call them exaggerated injury reports. So it was a thing. It was a thing, and then it wasn't. And partially it wasn't because like that team, the 1920 team, was a mess. The just roster wasn't very good, and then Zach Collins got hurt, and he was like a linchpin for the whole entire roster, which is kind of unbelievable. Rodney Hood got hurt. They had Carmelo Anthony, and then their front line was Carmelo and Hassan Whiteside, and it wasn't very good. They weren't very good. So there was a time when, every year you could count on the Damian Lillard-led Blazers of taking off after the All-Star break. In recent seasons, it hasn't been necessarily true, part because, in 2020, they were going to buck the trend anyway in that year. And then the previous 2 years, it's just not a very good comparison. It's like 35 games after the break where they they played about the same number beforehand and had about the same record. And then last year where they lost on purpose. Not a great comparison, but there was a time when this was real. So that got me thinking, like, does Dame always put his foot down after the All-Star break? Like, is he always really good? So I looked at Damian Lillard's career splits, pre and post All-Star splits. Pre-All-Star break for his career, Damian Lillard has averaged 25 points, 4 rebounds, just over 6.5 assists on 44% shooting and 37% from 3. 89.5 from the free throw line. Post All-Star break for his career, he's averaged 25 points, 4 rebounds, 6.5 assists, 44% shooting, 38% from the three-point line, and 89.5% from the free throw stripe. He's darn near identical. Here's the thing about Damian Lillard. It's not that he turns it on pre and post. It's that he's really good always. He's just a really good basketball player. It is true that he's had bigger scoring surges, and the best example of this is in 2016-17 when he was averaging about 26 a game pre-break, and that bumped up to 29.7 on 61% true shooting. He basically averaged 30 points per game on 61% true shooting, and they went 18-8 to make the playoffs. That year he went nuts. The following year his scoring bumped up, but his efficiency didn't come with him. Same with the year after that, in the year after that in 2019, he's basically had identical numbers pre and post break. Here's the thing about Dame. He's good when he plays. So pre-All-Star break, post-All-Star break, Damian Lillard's going to bring it. That's good news because he's having maybe the best offensive season of his career. Maybe just straight up the best season of his career. I think he's been better on defense than he has in recent seasons as well in terms of want to and interest in playing defense. I think he's I particularly like just guarding the ball. I feel like Dame has been much more competitive in this season. Not much more, but more competitive in this season for my money. So here's the good news about like the myth, or maybe it might be outdated idea that the Blazers usually take off after the break. Damian Lillard has been incredibly consistent when he's been on the court. His pre-All-Star numbers are nearly identical to his post-All-Star numbers. And if that's the case again, you're getting a dude who's averaging like 32 a game, along with close to 8 assists, and he's just been fantastic. He's been one of the probably 4 or 5 best offensive players in the league. He's back to the level that we've seen him be at when he touches his peak, and he's doing it for a sustained period of time where he's just unto himself a great offense, and he's been that. So if you have faith in the Blazers, it's because you have faith in Dame carrying them along with a beat-up roster, with with a fat road trip coming up here in March, with all of the challenges ahead of them. If you believe in this team, it's because you believe in Dame, and history tells you he's just good when he plays, pre and post All-Star. Even if he has history of turning it on, he also has history of already having turned it on. So, what do the Blazers need to do to make the playoffs? That's what I want to talk about to close the show. I got the number for you. I have gone digging to what I believe is the number the Blazers need to hit and the number of wins they need to get in order to make the playoffs. That's what we'll talk about to close the show. Join me in that final segment, won't you? Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. And you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. I went to Cleaning the Glass. It's a stats website run by Ben Falk, former NBA front office employee for a variety of teams, including your Portland Trail Blazers. Ben has the projections, the 82 win projections for every team based on their statistical profile. And why I like Ben's is because Cleaning Glass sorts out garbage time. So it's like, when the games matter, how is this team playing? What is their profile like in the competitive moments of basketball? And the So I looked at the projection for the top 8 teams. Actually, I looked at the projection for the top 13 teams in the West because I don't think San Antonio and Houston are getting there. They're doing something else. But there are 13 teams in the West that are at least vaguely interested in making the playoffs. I have no idea what Utah's front office wants to do, but their players want to make the playoffs. I have no doubt about it. The Lowry Markkanen, Colin Sexton, and Jordan Clarkson are going to try to win basketball games. But maybe Danny Ainge has other plans. But I looked at the 13th place Lakers. They fancy themselves a playoff team. The Blazers, not 100% clear to me that they're making an aggressive playoff push. I would say that they're probably not, but certainly they're not going to pull the plug. Not without some other prompting. They're gonna come what may. They're comfortable. My read on it, based on Joe Cronin's comments and based on some comments that Damian Lillard made on a podcast over the weekend, they are going to go for it. And if it doesn't work, they're comfortable if it doesn't work. But what I did is I went to Clean the Glass and looked at the projections of win totals based on every team's statistical profile to get an idea of what, roughly speaking, the 8th seed in the West is going to need to make the playoffs. What you're going to need to be a top 8 team in the West. Obviously, top 10 teams get 9 and 10 get into the play-in is really hard to make it from the 9 and 10. Certainly it happens. See New Orleans last year. Single elimination games are weird. You get there and anything could happen. So the number, Memphis and Denver are both on a 53 win pace based on their statistical profile. Sacramento's at 45, then New Orleans, Oklahoma City are at 44, Dallas and Golden State and Phoenix all at 43. More on them in a moment. And then, so that's your cutoff. That's 8. 9 and 10 and 11, actually. Minnesota, Portland, and Utah all profile as 42 win teams right now. And below them, the 4th place Los Angeles Clippers profile as a 39 win team. And the 13th place Los Angeles Lakers, they've been bad all season. They just have good players on the roster, but they're bad. 37 win team based on their statistical profile. A lot of that is you missed AD and LeBron. You get smoked in those minutes. You look like a bad basketball team. But those are profile. The actual standings have some weight here too. There's some meaning in the standings. And Denver and Memphis, the Blazers are not in the range to even be talking about them. They're 7.5 games behind Memphis. I don't think they're making up 7.5 games in the final 24 on the Grizzlies. We'll see. Wouldn't it be fun? But everyone else is at least vaguely in range. The Blazers, as we sit today before the second half of the season, are 4.5 back of the Kings. They win on Thursday. They're 3.5 back of what would be the tied for 4th place Sacramento Kings. There's still a ton of teams to leapfrog, so it's not as simple as just 3 games, but you get the idea. It's close. So if you look at the standings, you're not catching Denver and Memphis. Sacramento gettable, and judging by my man Matt George over at Locked On Kings, there is some angst among the Kings fan base whether they're going to hold on and make the playoffs. I believe they will. They've been good all season. They've been really healthy all season too. So as long as they continue that trend, I think if Sabonis and Fox play, they're going to be fine. The Clippers are in 4th, and I think the Clippers got better at the break. I think they added Russell Westbrook today officially. Well, I don't think Russell Westbrook vastly raises their ceiling, but I'm not one of these people that thinks he tanks a team. But he might on other teams. The Clippers can cut bait is the thing. They can just say, yep, this didn't work. See ya, and play Terrence Mann and Bones Highland. They can just let him go. It's the Lakers didn't have that luxury. $47 million. The salary stuff is easier. And I also just don't think Russ is a wild, terrible negative on that specific team that needs someone who can get to the rim and someone who can pass a little bit. I don't think he's a good fit necessarily. I'd rather just play Terrence Mann, but I don't think Russell Westbrook is terrible. I think Aaron Gordon is a nice addition. I think Mason Plumlee is a nice bench addition. I think the Clippers they're already in 4th and they got better. And I think the real thing with the Clippers is their record's really good when Kawhi plays. That dude doesn't play often, but when he plays, they look like one of the good teams. Assuming he plays down the stretch, they're going to be one of the good teams. The Suns, did the Suns do anything at the trade deadline? I can't recall. Oh yeah, they added Kevin Durant. Yeah, I think the Suns are going to get a little bit better too. They're in fifth place. They're whatever, a game and a half back of the third place Kings. I think the Suns, like even if they profile as a 43 win team based on their statistical profile up to this point, that does not account for the addition of Kevin Durant, who is apparently going to make his return in March 8th. So we're a little while away from that's according to Shams Charania of The Athletic. We're a little while away from that exactly, but when he gets there, I think they'll be pretty darn good. The Mavs are in fifth. Mavs are in sixth. I think they're better. In the regular season, they're better. Kyrie Irving's going to make them better in the regular season. I don't think that's controversial. Pelicans are kind of a mess. Zion's not going to play for still a couple weeks. They were really good at one point when they were healthy. They at times look pretty helpless. They just can sputter out heavily on both ends where it's like they can't score and they can't get stops. And then there's moments where it's like, oh, they have a million good wings and they have Brandon Ingram and oh man, they're really good. They've just been kind of they've been searching for it for a while. I think they're a team that conceivably, they're one of the few teams, they're the only team so far in the top 7 that I could see taking a step back. I guess the Kings could technically, but I don't see them dropping as far because they're not all the way, they've got a 3-game cushion on New Orleans. Minnesota's been playing better. They figured it out. Anthony Edwards, after a slow start, was playing a lot better. Golden State still without Steph Curry for at least a week. OKC just won't go away. The Jazz might want to get worse. Then you got the Blazers and the Lakers. The Lakers are better, but who knows if they're ever going to get it together. And the Blazers are just, they're a little beat up right now. And if they get healthy, they can get there. That is to say, I think of the teams that are like in the playoff race, and there's like, let's just say the Jazz are, for our purposes. Of the 13 teams in the playoff race, I think you could argue that, removing, if we take the 13 teams, remove the top 2, of the 11 teams kind of chasing those final spots, I think you could argue that like 7 of them improved, just like by health, by trades, by kind of finding their rhythm, figuring out who they are. Those I think, the Jazz got worse, and that's probably it. The Blazers got worse, but like they haven't moved much in the standings, so it's going to be tough. So what do the Blazers need to do? You're saying what you promised us a number. What's the number? Based on the projections of 538, the line to get to the 8th spot is 43, and the line to get to the 10th spot is probably about 42 wins. So I'm going to say for the Blazers to make the playoffs down the stretch, they're going to need to go 15-9. 15-9. It'll be their best post All-Star surge in a while, because they've had some weird post All-Star seasons, part due to the changing world. 15-9, that gets you to 43 wins. That's the number they got to aim for. They really they have not been that good in a while. They have not put together a stretch where they've won 15 out of 24 since early in the season. They just have struggled all year long. They had a really hot start, and then they came crashing down, and they just haven't been consistently good all year long. They won the first 4 games of the season. They haven't put together a 4-game winning streak since then. They are still in the mix, to be sure. They are still in the mix, to be sure. Like a win over the Kings on Thursday, they're right back in the playoff picture. You beat the Kings, you beat Houston, you get 2 in a row playing the Warriors on, that game's on Tuesday night. You have a chance probably to end up in 9th place when the dust settles. But I am kind of, I've said this before on the show, I'll say it again, I will be late on the Blazers. I'm comfortable being late now. So if they do this and they rip off some wins and they beat New Orleans, and they rip off 4 straight out of the break, I will be the doubter late on the bandwagon, and I will try to grab the back of the bandwagon, and y'all can kick me off and throw me under the truck. That's fine. That's where haters belong, I guess. But like, I've kind of tapped out of my like, they can do it optimism. But I'll say this, they can do it. Like the math is there for them, and Damian Lillard's been excellent. They're not totally out of it. They got to win 15 of their final, based on my calculations, they got to win 15 of their final 24 games to get into the playoffs. That's a big ask. It starts today, as you're listening to this, Thursday evening. Let's see if they can do it. Come back for more shows tomorrow. We'll talk about the Kings game on our show on Friday, and then we'll do 5 more shows next week because that's what we do here at Locked On Blazers. It's a daily podcast, free on all platforms, coming at you Monday through Friday. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.